The reality of sudden moments is something every single one of us has experienced, whether we realized it at the time or not. Life has a way of surprising us. You can be driving down the road, humming along to the radio, when suddenly the phone rings with news you never expected. You can be sitting in a doctor's office, waiting casually for a routine checkup, and in one instant, a single word changes everything. I remember one time, years ago, when a dear friend of mine called late in the night. The voice on the other end carried a weight I could feel through the phone. One moment, everything seemed stable, predictable, ordinary, and in the blink of an eye, nothing would ever be the same again. That is the truth about sudden moments. They arrive unannounced, unapologetic, and unavoidable. We live most of our days assuming that tomorrow will be much like today, that routines will stay in place, that the familiar will continue to unfold. But when those moments come, and they will come, they cut through the ordinary and remind us of just how fragile, how unpredictable, how short life can be. A single moment can redefine your priorities, test your faith, and set you on a path you never imagined. And while these sudden moments may take us by surprise, they never take God by surprise. He is not caught off guard, nor is he scrambling to respond to what has just shaken our world. Instead, he stands ready, already present, already at work, weaving his eternal purposes into the fabric of that moment. Sudden moments force us to see clearly what we would rather ignore. They shake us awake. They remind us that we are not as in control as we think, that time is not promised, and that life itself is as delicate as morning dew. And yet, within the weight of these sudden moments lies the possibility of transformation. Just as lightning illuminates the night sky for an instant, so can these moments light up the truth that was hidden in the shadows of our assumptions. They can push us to our knees, draw us back to God, and remind us of what matters most. God's timing is perfect, though it rarely aligns with our calendars or clocks. We live in a world where everything is measured by minutes, deadlines, and schedules, and when life doesn't unfold according to our carefully laid plans, frustration rises within us. But God operates on a timetable that isn't bound by seconds or hours. His timing is eternal, precise, and filled with purpose. I can recall moments when I prayed and waited some more, convinced that heaven's silence meant heaven's neglect. Yet when the answer finally came, it arrived not a second too late, nor a second too soon. Looking back, I could see that had it come earlier, I wouldn't have been ready, and had it come later, the opportunity would have been lost. God knew exactly when to act, even when I did not. Think of Abraham and Sarah waiting for the child God promised. To human eyes, the years stretched too long, the promise seemed forgotten, and their hope grew weary. But when the fullness of time came, Isaac was born not a moment ahead of schedule, not a moment behind, or consider Lazarus in the tomb. To those grieving, Jesus arrived too late, but in reality, he arrived at the precise moment when his glory would be displayed most fully. If he had come earlier, they would have witnessed a healing, but by coming when he did, they witnessed a resurrection. That is the difference divine timing makes. When God contacts us, it is never accidental and never arbitrary. His timing intersects with our lives at the exact point where his purpose and our need converge. It may feel inconvenient, it may disrupt our plans, it may even shake us to our core, but later, sometimes much later, we see the beauty of what he was doing. His timing is not meant to frustrate us, but to form us, to shape us into people who trust more deeply and lean less on our own understanding. So often we cry out, "Lord, why not now?" And yet heaven whispers back, because now is not yet the right time. Waiting is not wasted when God is involved, it is preparation. The silence is not absence, it is orchestration. And when the moment comes when his voice breaks into your life, you will see that his timing was not only perfect, it was merciful, wise, and exactly what your soul needed. The weight of eternal contact is unlike anything else we will ever experience. When heaven reaches down and touches earth, it is not a casual brush or a fleeting impression. It is a moment that presses on the very soul and leaves an imprint that cannot be erased. Think of Moses at the burning bush. That was no ordinary fire. The bush burned but was not consumed, and in that holy encounter Moses could do nothing but remove his sandals and tremble in awe. That is what happens when God makes contact. His presence overwhelms the ordinary and demands a response that changes the course of a life. There are times when we read a familiar passage of Scripture, and suddenly it feels alive in a way that pierces the heart. Words we may have skimmed over before suddenly weigh heavy with conviction, comfort, or calling. That is eternal contact. Or consider those moments of prayer when silence suddenly turns into a stillness so thick you can feel it, as though heaven itself has leaned in close. That is not coincidence. That is eternity brushing against time. Paul experienced it on the road to Damascus. One moment he was marching confidently, with letters of authority clutched in his hand, breathing threats against the followers of Christ. The next moment he was blinded by light, stopped in his tracks, and forever redirected. The weight of that encounter stripped him of pride, shattered his plans, and remade him into a servant who would carry the gospel to the nations. That is what eternal contact does. It does not simply inform, it transforms, and when such contact comes, you cannot remain the same. You may try to explain it away, you may attempt to resist, but deep within you, something has shifted. It's like standing at the edge of the ocean when a wave crashes in. It pushes against you with a force you cannot withstand. Eternal contact presses upon the heart with a holy weight, reminding us that this world is not all there is, that our lives are not random, and that God is very much alive and present. It humbles us. It convicts us. It comforts us. Sometimes it brings us to tears. Sometimes it sends us to our knees. But always, always it calls us closer. That kind of contact is unforgettable, undeniable, and unshakable. And when it comes, it is meant not to crush us, but to awaken us to the reality that eternity is closer than we think, and heaven is always nearer than it seems. Our readiness to respond is the hinge on which everything turns. It is not enough to simply hear the call, to sense the prompting, or to feel the weight of God's presence pressing upon us. The question is, what will we do when that moment comes? So often we assume we will rise to the occasion, that when the voice of God breaks through the noise of life, we will leap up in obedience. But the truth is, our response in the sudden moment is shaped long before that moment arrives. It is forged in the habits of our daily walk, in the posture of our heart, and in the depth of our faith. Think about Samuel as a young boy, lying in the temple at night. When the voice of God called, he didn't recognize it at first. He ran to Eli, uncertain of what he was hearing. But when the call came again, and he was instructed to answer, his words were simple yet profound. "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." That is readiness. It wasn't about knowing all the answers, or even fully understanding what God was about to do. It was about a posture of surrender, a willingness to listen and to obey. On the other hand, consider those who heard the voice of Christ but turned away. The rich young ruler, for example, stood face to face with Jesus, invited to follow him, but when the call required sacrifice, he walked away sorrowful. He heard, but he was not ready to respond. The moment passed, and the opportunity was lost. How many times do we do the same? How often do we feel that nudge in our spirit, that whisper that says, "Call this person, forgive that hurt, step into this opportunity," and yet we dismiss it, assuming there will always be more time, another chance, a better season. Readiness is not about perfection, it is about availability. It is about living in such a way that when the call comes, whether in joy or in crisis, in the ordinary or in the extraordinary, you don't need to scramble to prepare. Your heart is already tuned, your spirit already surrendered. It is like a runner at the starting line, muscles taut, eyes forward, every sense alert, waiting only for the sound of the gun. In that instant there is no hesitation, no fumbling, only movement. That is how God calls us to live, watchful, attentive, ready, for when He contacts you, it will not always be at a convenient time. It may be in the middle of the night, in the middle of your plans, or in the middle of your doubts. But if your heart is prepared, you will not miss the moment. You will not walk away sorrowful, nor will you be caught unready. You will be able to respond with confidence, with surrender, with faith. And that readiness will make all the difference, not just in that single moment, but in the trajectory of your entire life. Living with expectancy is choosing to rise each day with the awareness that heaven may break into your life before the sun sets. It is a posture of the heart that refuses to drift into complacency, that refuses to treat life as though it were guaranteed and predictable. To live expectantly is to walk with an open hand, ready for God to place something new within it or to take something away for His greater purpose. It is to believe that every encounter, every interruption, every seemingly insignificant moment could carry eternal weight. When Jesus told His disciples to keep watch, He was not calling them to paranoia or fear. He was calling them to live with readiness and hope. He wanted them to understand that the moments which shape eternity will not come with flashing signs or long warnings. They will come suddenly, like a thief in the night, or like a bridegroom arriving at midnight. The wise virgins in the parable kept their lamps filled with oil, not because they knew the exact hour, but because they trusted that the hour would come. That is expectancy. It is not about predicting the moment. It is about being prepared for whenever it arrives. I think of how we wait for loved ones to arrive at the airport. You can feel the expectancy in the crowd, the way eyes scan the gates, the way children hold balloons and flowers, the way anticipation electrifies the air. No one stands there casually half-interested. They are focused, alert, ready to rush forward when that familiar face appears. That is the kind of expectancy God calls us to in our faith. Not distracted, not indifferent, but watchful, ready to respond when His presence is revealed in our midst. Living with expectancy transforms how we handle today. It keeps us from wasting time on bitterness, from clinging to things that cannot last, from drifting through life without purpose. It shapes how we speak to others, how we forgive, how we love, how we invest our energy. Because when you live as though contact could come at any moment, you want to be found faithful. You want to be found ready. You want your lamp to be burning brightly, not sputtering out, and this expectancy is not heavy with dread. It is light with hope. For to the one who trusts in Christ, the sudden call is not a cause for fear but for joy. It is the fulfillment of every promise, the unveiling of every longing, the moment when faith becomes sight. To live expectantly is to live fully awake, fully alive, fully attentive to the fact that eternity is always pressing close, and that at any instant the voice of God could break through the silence of this world and draw us into the reality we were created for. And so, my friends, as we bring this message to a close, let us remember what we have heard together. Life is filled with sudden moments, unexpected, unplanned, unavoidable. But in those very moments, God's perfect timing is at work. Never late, never early, always weaving His purposes into our story. When eternity reaches down to touch time, the weight of that contact changes everything. It humbles us, transforms us, and reminds us that we are part of something far greater than ourselves. But the question has never been whether God will call. The question is whether we will be ready to respond. Will we be like Samuel, saying, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening"? Or will we turn away, distracted by lesser things, unprepared for the moment that could change everything? Readiness is not about knowing when, it is about living each day as if the call could come at any time. That is why we must live with expectancy, to rise each morning with hope in our hearts and faith in our steps, believing that today could be the day heaven breaks into our lives. And when that moment comes, and it will come, you will not want to be found asleep, indifferent, or unprepared. You will want to be found faithful, ready, and willing. So I leave you with this: live watchful, live prayerful, live surrendered. For when they contact you instantly, when God's voice pierces through the noise of this world, you will want to be able to answer with confidence and joy, "Here I am, Lord, I am ready."